And we're live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So the history of radio drama is pretty interesting. It started in the late 20s and early 30s, so pre-Depression, and it goes all the way up to actually the last kind of network radio dramatic shows were airing in 1962, which is kind of crazy when you think about, like, by that point you have TV and you have everything else. But they were still doing weekly detective shows and things like that up until 1962.
In terms of my connection to radio theater, I've been a fan and listener of it since I was about 11 or 12. For a birthday, I got some tapes of The Shadow, the old radio show.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
So listen to those and love them, and as time went on, you kind of go down the rabbit hole and you find, oh, there's more stuff, and there's stuff like this, and additional stuff that I like, and that led to collecting and listening to different shows, and really have been doing that ever since.
If you've never been to a show like this before, you're in for a real treat tonight. We have all of our actors will be here on the stage, and they'll be reading from their scripts for you, while our Foley effects artist, Aaron here, will be doing Foley effects for you live on stage as they read from the script. I wonder who that could be. Why, ladies and gentlemen, it's the Firehouse Radio Players.
My name is Jack Mooney.
My name is James Snyder, and I am the director
I'm one of the producers
/ writers
and writers
/ occasional actor
of the Firehouse Radio Players show.
I got started through the On-the-Air Radio Players through the Henrico Theater Company.
On-the-Air Radio Players presenting recreations of Golden Age radio. I was like, well, okay, I gotta see what this is about.
I got involved with that, and once I was in one show, I was just like, I gotta keep doing this. So I did it year after year after year. Jack and I started talking about doing this show as like more than what we had done with On-the-Air Radio Players.
We said, this is ultimately a radio show. We can do this. Like, you get some microphones, you get some people around a table, and you just record it. And we thought, okay, well, let's maybe put that in the back of our mind. Maybe we'll do that someday.
My first experience as an actor was I was cast in this radio show in Minneapolis where I grew up, and I was cast because I had a really squeaky voice and a really bad speech impediment. But on radio, there wasn't anybody there. I mean, we were talking into these microphones, and we were reading our lines, so it was a pretty easy thing, and it allowed me to overcome a lot of my social insecurities. In my adult life, I've seen a couple of stage productions of radio plays, and you have the sound effects exposed and being made in real time, and so that magic of sort of these combining of different techniques to sort of trigger an imagination was, I think, what I love about theater, but radio plays did it much more directly for me.
Come in and talk to Nefarious.
Nefarious here. Go ahead, Smith.
I thought, well, I really want to do that. So I started to ask around, but I couldn't find any people who were interested in it. I mean, people said, oh yeah, that's interesting, and then they never followed through. And I was meeting with Matt Tracy, who played music in the last Firehouse Radio Players show. We were chatting about this and that, and I mentioned it to him, and he said,
I know people who do something like that. So that led to some meetings with James and then me and Firehouse, and we explained what we do, how we do it, and the types of shows that we could put on.
All of those meetings were like meeting your long-lost brother or something. It was just like, oh my God, look, I have a theater, you have content, here we are.
Now we're doing radio theater at Firehouse. And now we return to the lawless days of the Old West for another adventure of Buck Taciturn, U.S. Marshal.
You got some nerve to say that to me.
Yep.
No. fancy talk.
Then I talked to him about doing Captain Fremulon. I gave him a script, and he loved it.
The thrilling adventures of Captain Fremulon! Yes, it's another interstellar escapade of Captain Fremulon, daring space ranger, and his intrepid crew, Junior Space Ranger Petey Peterson, Quasar the Space Dog, and Wendy.
Captain Fremulon, which is the other regular show we do, is heavily inspired by Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon.
Presenting for the first time in radio the amazing interplanetary adventures of Flash Gordon and Dale Arden.
You know, these old space serial adventure heroes who would always be rocketing through space and inexplicably have a woman and a kid as a sidekick. And it's like, who the hell puts these people on a spaceship with this guy? Because all they're going to do is get captured or put in peril. We've got the daring space ranger.
Flash leaps to the royal balcony and joins the gorgeously jeweled princess, who commands the slaves to keep back.
And the damsel in distress.
Be careful, Flash. He's reaching for the controls.
But instead of him being the daring hero, she's actually the brains of the operation, and she's always pulling him out of the fire.
That being said, Captain, I think we might have taken out one of our satellites.
Gosh, Captain Fremulon, you're so clever.
And I'll never apologize for it, Petey.
James writes another show, which is Cliffhanger, Private Eye.
That's right, I'm Cliffhanger, Private Eye.
You know, Cliffhanger is pretty heavily influenced by shows like Sam Spade and Philip Marlowe, like those hard-boiled radio detectives. They would say things like,
The start of it was yesterday when Eve Adams first
walked in my office and she had more curves in the 7th game of the World Series. Things like that, which are already they lend themselves to parody.
I saw her and my jaw took the express elevator right to the floor.
So we took that, we took the idea of, a guy who's more soft-boiled than hard-boiled.
Yes, sir. I'm afraid we're not entertaining salesmen today.
The only thing I'm selling is justice. And if you buy now, I'll throw in some law and order.
I think what we ultimately want to do is, obviously the jokes and the dialogue has more of a modern sensibility, but if you just strip down like a log line of each of these stories, like all of them could exist as shows from that era. The approach we take to it, the slant and the jokes, is what puts it into a modern context.
You're listening to Radio Classics on Public Broadcast Radio. Coming up later tonight, another episode of No, Please Don't Do That. That's PBR's fast-paced game show where pundits are quizzed on current events while they receive mild electrical shocks.
So it's really what the sort of the source of all of performance and art is, which is storytelling. And finally, I had decided I really wanted to do War of the Worlds.
So it's one of, if not the most famous or infamous radio show of all time.
The War of the Worlds was originally written by H.G. Wells, and Orson Welles, no relation, decided to adapt it for radio to put on the air through CBS.
It was part of this show that was called the Mercury Theater on the Air. So every week they would present usually an adaptation of a famous novel or play. And he said, I really want to do something that plays the drama as if it's happening in real time. They picked the War of the Worlds, and they start to work on this script, and there was a real effort to make things as realistic as they could. So that goes on October 30th, 1938. The story, the popular story is people, when there was a commercial break, they switched over to CBS and heard,
"The top floor! Look out there! Stand back!" Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed.
And the panic that is supposed to have ensued has largely been debunked.
He does a little speech at the end where he's like, this was our way of jumping out of the bushes and yelling boo. And, we didn't really annihilate the world. everything's still here.
But the level of panic and fear was overblown.
It was more for the newspapers to sort of like downplay the radio and say radio's bad, look, they're terrifying people, and you should read our articles because they're boring and they're not going to terrify you. I don't think that's what they were actually saying.
I'm sure there's going to be an audience that we get who either hasn't heard it before or hasn't seen it performed and can really appreciate the work that went into crafting it and how it would have hit an audience back in 1938.
Welcome to our show.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own.
We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene, and will have our commentator, Carl Phillips, give you a word description as soon as he can reach there from Princeton.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carl Phillips again at the Wilma Farm at Dover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes.
I seen a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo, something smacked the ground.
I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, have buried in a vast pit. Lord, they're turning into flame!
Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the State Militia, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill.
Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars.
Projection 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire.
I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth.
I think that what it did was it confirmed everything I think that Jack and James and I believe radio theater can do, which is you can tell a story and you can really impact an audience by not manifesting everything in the story, but actually by leaving it sort of just referring to things.
It's a wonderful treat each week to turn back the dial to those thrilling days of yesteryear and leave the cares of the modern world behind. No internet, no smartphones, no endless cycle of calls from debt collectors.
It truly was a simpler time, Craig.
The future plans that I have, or that I hope to have for the Firehouse Radio Players, is that we'll continue doing what we do with Firehouse for the foreseeable future.
And now we're locked in for sure through April of next year. Hopefully, if things continue to go well, they'll ask us to come back and do more.
We'll keep doing this with Firehouse Theater until they tell us to stop.
Hopefully that, collaborative energy will continue and we'll come up with new things or continue to improve on the model that, they're working with now. Because I think that as we sort of become more technologically sophisticated as a culture and we can get access to everything on any appliance, that the more pure something is, the more it has impact on us and it seems genuine. And I think radio plays have a lot of, they're just, because of their simplicity, they have this purity to them. And there's nothing mediating our experience of the storytelling.
Adventure, romance, drama. There were so many wonderful shows in those days.
Say, Craig, wouldn't it be neat if people did these kinds of shows today? New, old-time radio.
Really, Barley? That seems pretty silly to me. From all of us here at PBR, thanks for listening, and good night.
Now, to the other part of the sign, when Aaron turns on this other part right here, look at that. We have a pre-trained audience. It makes me so much happier. You guys just applaud. There will be a couple of applause breaks during the show. Yeah, that being said, I'm not going to keep myself up here any longer. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the Firehouse Radio Players.